Nobuo Uematsu is a famous Japanese video game composer responsible for the awesome music in the Final Fantasy series. He has composed for many games other than Final Fantasy, including some music for Chrono Trigger. He has been nicknamed the Beethoven of video game music, and has appeared in the FM Hall of Fame several times. He has also worked with Hironobu Sakaguchi and his game development company, Mistwalker, composing music for titles such as Lost Odyssey, Terra Battle, and Fantasian. Nobuo Uematsu was born on March 21, 1959 in Kochi, Japan. Kochi is located on Shikoku, one of Japan's 5 main islands. Kochi doesn't have a lot going on, but it is beautiful with its mountains and rivers. Uematsu was first introduced to the piano when he was 11 or 12 years old. He picked the piano because a lot of people played the guitar, and he knew that drums and other bass instruments weren't for him. He did teach himself how to play, but had some assistance from his older sister. He never had a formal musical education. Growing up, Uematsu liked to read music magazines, mostly filled with pop icons and idols. In one particular magazine, at the end of every issue, there was a song with musical notes. At the time, Uematsu was inexperienced with music and notation, but he knew it meant something, and it was very interesting to him. During his high school years, his friends wanted to start a band, so he was the keyboardist. After high school, he attended the University of Kanagawa, where he met his future wife Reiko. Uematsu obtained a degree in English from the university. After college, Uematsu wanted to compose music for movies, something he had always wanted to do, though he actually wanted to become a pro wrestler when he was even younger. Uematsu knew getting a Hollywood music job wouldn't really make sense for him at the moment, since he had no experience. During that time after college, Uematsu worked at a music rental shop. That's also the time when he was confronted by a Square employee. But how, when, and where did the confrontation happen? Quiz time! A. Uematsu was at a bar, which he went to every night near his house to drink with friends, when suddenly a woman approached him who was working at Square. She said that there was a music job at Square. She asked him if he wanted to do it, and Uematsu agreed. B. Uematsu was working at a music rental shop when a Square employee told him there was a music job at Square, and if he wanted to do it. Uematsu agreed. C. Every night, Uematsu would drink with his friends in his small one-room home. One night, a woman came and told him that she was making games. Eventually, she led him to Square, where he got a music job. Trick question. When I was learning about Nobuo Uematsu, some sources said A, some said B, and others said C. Each of these options were Uematsu's own words, each spoken in interviews. No one really knows, not even Uematsu. So after Uematsu got hired at Square, somehow, he thought of it as an entryway to making movie music eventually. Uematsu composed music for Square titles before Final Fantasy came out. Some of Uematsu's first titles he composed for Square were Blasty, Rad Racer, and 3D World Runner. Square made a lot of games, but none of them were very popular. Of course, that changed when Final Fantasy was released along with Uematsu's praised soundtrack. But during the development of the game, Square wasn't doing well. The company was aware that if the next game wasn't a big hit, then Square was done. It was probably because the many games Square was making were getting too expensive to keep up with, and Square couldn't afford them and was most likely in debt. People weren't really buying them. Not only did Final Fantasy save Square, but it also caused Nobuo Uematsu to compose game music as his full-time career. Square and a smaller company, Enix, merged in 2004 and became Square Enix. This was the same year when Uematsu left Square. Uematsu has reported that he left because the company had moved to a different part of Tokyo, and he wasn't happy with the change causing him to leave. Uematsu has also expressed that he prefers working on RPGs with a team of 4 to 5 people, instead of working with a huge team in which more decisions are made by committee. He feels more important to the team that way. Also, Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, left Square in 2004. After Uematsu and Sakaguchi left, Uematsu formed his own production company Smile Please in 2004, and then founded Dog Ear Records in 2006. Sakaguchi founded his own video game development studio, Mistwalker, in 2004 after he left Square. Uematsu wrote the full soundtrack for Blue Dragon, Mistwalker's first game, and many more afterwards. Nobuo Uematsu has had his music played in symphonies for quite a while. In fact, the first time his music was performed live by an entire orchestra was after Final Fantasy II was released. Uematsu was nervous and excited about his Final Fantasy songs being played in front of an audience when it happened the first time. There are some things about working with symphonies that he likes, such as Distant Worlds, that he has never gotten over. When he practices with symphonies, he gets nervous about the fact that he is surrounded by people who have been formally trained in music since they were about 4 or 5 years old. Though this is true, it doesn't really matter because of 2 reasons. First of all, Uematsu is very accomplished and is taken seriously, perhaps more than the musicians part of the symphony. Second of all, a symphony wants to play his music, which begs the question even further. Arnie Roth is the conductor of the Distant World symphonies. When Uematsu first met Roth, he found he was very carefree and liked to drink. Uematsu was not expecting this. He thought he would be a very stiff kind of person. On top of being friendly, Uematsu wanted Roth to work with him because he conducted music that wasn't just classical. He thought that he might not look at game music in a funny way. Uematsu loves the Distant World symphonies because he feels very free to do what he wants. Distant Worlds performs Uematsu's Final Fantasy music in many different countries, and is very popular. Nobuo Uematsu hasn't only had his music played in symphonies though. In 2002, Uematsu was the keyboardist in the Black Mages, a band that played rock versions of Final Fantasy songs, until 2010 when they disbanded, and Uematsu formed the Earthbound Papas, a successor band that still exists today. Ever since Uematsu left Square in 2004, he has been a freelancer and has made game music for several companies. He collaborated with Japanese singer Yosh and wrote Hollow for the Final Fantasy VII Remake. He has also worked many times with Mistwalker. Most recently, he composed a full 60-piece soundtrack for Fantasian, a game created by Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy. Fantasian is an RPG, and is inspired by the Final Fantasy series that Sakaguchi created in the past. The main character is Leo, a guy who has lost his memory. Leo is really soft looking, like whose idea was it for Leo to look like this? Kina, on the other hand, is a girl who works and lives at a fortune teller shop and looks great. I'm not really a big fan of RPGs, but I can tell you that the battle mechanics are pretty fun, and that the scenery is beautiful. The music done by Uematsu is outstanding, with music that fits the forest, the village, and the monster battles. One of the complaints I have about Fantasian is that when Kina becomes part of your team, though this is true, if you play as Leo, then Kina is somehow gone, and the same is true when you play as Kina instead of Leo. According to Uematsu himself and Sakaguchi, Fantasian may have been the last time Uematsu would be able to create a full soundtrack for a video game due to health issues. For more than 30 years, Uematsu has written many soundtracks for games and many individual songs. He learned the keyboard without being formally trained. He became known because of the Final Fantasy series. He had his Final Fantasy music played all around the world by Distant Worlds and started 2 bands. Uematsu has been credited with popularizing video game music. What will come next? Nobody knows. Until then, even if Uematsu is only able to make individual songs for games, is still able to make full soundtracks for games or nothing at all, Uematsu has left behind a massive collection of songs and soundtracks for people all around the world to enjoy. Until then, thanks for watching.